Good day, grade 12 learners, and welcome to today's English home language lesson. My name is Vosh Suchet, and this lesson is proudly brought to you in collaboration with the Cyborg Discovery Center and obviously the Department of Education. All right, today we're going to be dealing with that last part of your English home language paper 1 revision. Now, grade 12s, you are already busy writing papers and hopefully you're already in the rhythm of how to handle the pressure. But if you're not, please do take time to take care of your health and ensure that you are at that optimum performance level that you need to be at for these grade 12 exams. Remember, it's your first official exam and it's the stepping stone to where you're going to go after matric, okay? So take it very seriously and work with it. So today we're focusing on the section that is now dealing with your visual literacy and your textual editing. Remember, we have section A, which is comprehension, section B, your summary, and then section C with your language structures that we're dealing with. All right, so let's get into the lesson this afternoon and focus on the nitty-gritty part that, remember, in this case, it is open to interpretation, yes, but the concepts are basically what you should have mastered by now in your grade 12 year. So you've been hearing about these things continuously, hopefully from grade 8, grade 9, but definitely by grade 10 levels, you would have heard about all of these concepts and you need to be ready, sharpen the skills, and get the marks for those concepts that you have mastered. All right, so today on adverts and cartoon analysis, we're going to focus on that, yes, but I'm going to break it up into sections where I'm going to firstly deal with the information on your advertisements, then into your cartoons, and the final part of textual editing. All right, so we're going to look at the purpose of those things. We're going to go through the AIDA principle in terms of your advertisements. We're going to look at important elements that will definitely feature when we're dealing with cartoon analysis over our lifetime. All right, and also remember, there will be certain types of language concepts that are very important to master with adverts and cartoons as well. All right, now grade 12s, this meta language is important, yes, and we're going to test that now that you have the head knowledge, can you apply that when you're given a particular text or image to analyze? So your critical thinking skills are going to be tested in this part as well. Right, then how do we analyze your adverts and your cartoon strips when we are working with paper 1? And I'm going to go through that as well and then give you some hints on how to handle that. Right, so let's get into adverts. Now, you know, over your entire life experience thus far, there's always someone or something that is being advertised to you. All right, so it's showcasing something that is out there that that person or that object can offer you, and therefore we're looking at the advertisements having two important elements. The first one is it's very emotive in its nature. In other words, it's playing on your emotions. It's interfering with how you think about concepts in real life. And it's meant to appeal to you to do something. All right. And that's why we're saying it's very much emotive. There's also this element of persuasiveness or being persuasive. So that is when we are trying to make you, or in this case, the advertiser is trying to make you as a person do something or believe in some kind of concept. Okay, so it's convincing, it's manipulating you, it's influencing the way you're thinking about something. Right. So if we're looking at the AIDA principle, this is used throughout the business field, but in terms of English home language, we are saying to you, when you see an advert, you have to do certain things with that image, all right? You have to identify what in that image is firstly attracting my attention. All right, something there is going to grab my attention, be it the image, be it the graphics, be it the words in that particular text. So attention, what is it that's grabbing my attention? All right. Then from there, obviously, I would like to keep you interested in what I'm talking about. All right. So again, we're dealing with the interest aspect here, and we're saying, what is it that is keeping me genuinely curious about this particular product or service? All right. So when you're doing that, basically, you are liking something, because if you don't like it, immediately you will put that particular um, image or that particular book down and say, ah, it's not so much that I like that. And you will not pay attention to it. Okay. So in that part of interest seeking things, we are saying, what is it that keeps me curious to want to go on and makes me feel like I like what I'm listening to or what I'm hearing about? Right. From there, it develops into what we call that desire within us. Okay. So all of these things within the image or the text is now going to create a desire within me to say, what is it there again that is going to now conjure up this desire to want to buy into that idea or buy that particular product? Okay. So that is that feeling of, I want it, I can't do without it, I would never be the same if I don't have it. Right. So that is what the advertiser is looking for there. Right. And then finally, when he's done all of this, he has now got you to a point to say, all right, are you going to buy it or not? And at this point, we're generally going towards the positive one, which is taking action. Right. So what is it that's there that he's saying, yes, this is for me, and I'm going to go out there and buy it? So that's your AIDA principle, okay? Attention, interest, desire, and then finally taking the action to go and buy the product. So further on to that, let's look at a little bit of, oops, what happened there? Let's look at a particular breaking down of the AIDA principle. So look at these two adverts, for example. If you're looking at this one here that you've seen before, we usually think a woman's got a big mouth and she's got a lot to say, and that's already building on a stereotype, isn't it? So all this is saying is, all you can eat, rest, stop. So now we're thinking, what in here is grabbing my attention? And if you are that person who is liking a lot of visual things, you can obviously see a pretty face of a woman, and again, a wide open mouth. And then there's these vehicles traveling through as if the mouth is a tunnel, a gateway into the person. All right. So taking literal things and interpreting it figuratively is also what you need to be looking at. Right. And then this one here about wake up to the adventure inside you. Now, you know that this is also dealing with men's underwear, all right? So when you're going to sleep, what happens? Hopefully you dream about certain things. So this is trying to showcase to us that when you are sleeping, you are in a different realm altogether, and you are thinking about various things, dreaming about maybe a cruise, or dreaming about your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or dreaming about the next best thing that you want to go out and buy or do in life. Right. So this is again taking the literal idea of falling off to sleep and resting and being in a comfortable zone, and then delving into the deeper inner personality of all your dreams and aspirations that you're having when you are sleeping. All right, that you dream about. So that's kind of an interpretation that you want to look at. But what is it here that grabs my attention immediately? I focused on the one about the lady, and here in this particular one about the gentleman who is fast asleep, you can obviously see there's these flippers that he's using, And there's marine life around him, again associated with having an underwater experience, all right? An inner calming experience when you are underwater is usually what happens, because you interact with nature, you get to see marine life that you haven't seen before. That kind of thing should grab your attention. Okay, good. Then, so very much odd, unusual images will do that. It'll grab my attention. Catchy phrases, for example, like wake up to the adventure inside you. All right, we all think about an adventure outside, going out and having a big party and celebrating life and whatever. But we never think about delving deeper into our inner beings, thinking about things that we love, things that we can imagine about ourselves and where we want to go in 10 years or 5 years from now. All those things will be talking about your inner being, your inner space. All right, and that's where this particular advert is heading towards. Talking about waking up an adventure within yourself. Okay, then with regards to the interest aspect, there again are two ways of dealing with this that the advertiser uses. The first one is he takes all the visual techniques in terms of the visual effects, okay? It refers to what you see that attracts your attention, such as cartoons, maybe a graph that might be in that particular image that you'll be looking at, the color coding in terms of how the image is presented, maybe photographs that, are imprinted in a particular way, that kind of thing, all right? And then you've got the second aspect, which is the purpose. So generally, and most definitely, we are assuming that when an advertiser is putting out something, be it a product or a service, he is convincing us, he's manipulating us, he's persuading us to believe that that is the best product or the best service that is on offer in society. So he highlights certain aspects and he makes it easier for us to be involved in this advert. All right. So that's the aspects of dealing with interest under the AIDA principle. Furthermore, I did speak about the fact that then emotional impact that takes place. Okay, we get a response to what has been advertised. And then we're also looking at the linguistic technique. So there are language devices used, and here the advertiser matches the language that they are using to the target audience. Now, when we talk about target audience, remember it's specific. It cannot just be for everybody who loves us. There's a particular brand or service being advertised to a particular group or a particular person. Right. So maybe a professional or an academic person that might be there, or it might be a lawyer or a doctor. Certain fields of study would also have particular advertisements used. Right. So it is there to get us directly involved in what is being showcased. All right. So that language devices are used in the interest aspect as well. Now, you would know there's language that you use every day, and that language will definitely be used by the advertiser as well to make us feel part of the advert. All right, so it's to appeal to us as the public to buy into this idea that he is showcasing. So when he does this, he engages with us on a personal level. He makes us curious to continue reading further by mentioning or using certain words, for example, in that particular advert. Okay? Or he also may be doing the following. He may be using sophisticated language or formal language that is now maybe for the higher end of the realm of people. So in other words, the professional people, the academics, all right? Those ones that would have particular terms being used in their fields of study. He would be using that. Right. So why would he do that? He would use those devices because he wants to impress that particular field of people in that particular field. He wants to amaze them. He wants to convince them that if they buy this product, they will become a better doctor than the next doctor. If they offer this service, they would be a better doctor than the other doctor who doesn't offer that service. So this is obviously done to get us to think, to formulate an opinion about what is being advertised. And by doing that, he then keeps us curious. So if you're looking at a famous brand like McDonald's, for example, they always have this play on words in terms of um, you so want one. All right. Now you're thinking to yourself, yes, I do want it. Why? Because if you look at the image that is showcased to you with these burgers, they look so delicious. I mean, the garnishing looks to die for. Then you've got um, certain layers of cheese. Then you've got patties. Then you've got a double patty, for example. Then you've got a bun that looks totally shaped correctly. All those things, all right? And then you also have your cold drinks that are on offer. So all of that coming to you from one brand definitely would keep you interested, right? And then you do get some other advertisements that don't look very attractive. But again, when they say, for example, I want you, the change in the font, all right, more bold font used there as opposed to other parts of the text. For also when they say for the army, in this case, enlist now. Okay, so that's on the bottom. And then if you look at the image of pointing at you, the finger pointing at you means that you, meaning the person that's looking at this advert, the person that is listening to this particular lesson is being targeted. All right, so that is how we are working with interest. They're keeping you curious to want to go further. Then we've got the next part, which is desire. So this concept of desire is when we're talking about that emotional appeal. They want to convince you subtly that this item, this service will make you feel different than other people. It would make you sort of, give you better status, make you more happier. It would provide you with more security, for example, if it is a brand like that that's being advertised, right? And typically, if you're looking at adverts out there, sometimes with the car industry or even your brands in terms of your cold drinks, all that, they do use certain products that would sort of make you remember that brand more. All right. Now, if you're looking particularly at the BMW or even the Mercedes or whatever it is, you would know there's a difference between a C180 and a CLA, for example, or even an avant-garde as opposed to the classic, all of those things in Mercedes. All right. If you're looking at a BMW, for example, you would know there's a difference in terms of a 1 Series versus an F30 versus all of these other ones like your X1s, X2, and X3, sorry. So that is what you would be looking at. The sheer driving pleasure, for example, as opposed to how can we help you at a bank that will be advertising that, okay? So if you're looking at your brands in terms of Coke and all of the other ones, you would say, okay, what makes Coke more popular than Pepsi, for example? Obviously, when you go to a shop, you have a choice of all the brands you want to buy, all right? But you choose to buy the one that attracted your attention, the one that kept you interested. And at this moment in time, if you're wondering about around in the real world, you would see that Coca-Cola has this new range that they're now offering, where it's the same Coke, yes, but it's now given a person's name. The label has now changed to, for example, Umpo or Sichle, all of those things. So names have now been included on the Coca-Cola bottles. So if you want to go to the shop and you want to feel good about yourself, you would probably go and buy a Coke that has your name on it. Right, that's the new campaign that's going around. So again, grade 12s, remember, keep up with the trends around you right now. Stories in the media that's happening, there are political events, yes, but we don't really focus too much on political events unless they really, are going to shape everything we think about differently. So yes, it will come in certain aspects, all right? So you will be tested on concepts that are there that are going to affect you as a person going on in the real world in the next 2 to 3 years. Right. So the other aspect is then talking about the action. Once you've got the desire right, we now want you to go out and buy the product or buy into the service. So we manipulate you to take action. So here, what happens? They will give you information on the text in terms of where to go and buy this particular product, or where you can go and get more information about the service that's being offered. And that would then be as also in the terms of language being used. They would say, for example, for as little as 5 Rand 99. All right, that 99 cents, for example, is what would get you to think, okay, it's not 7 Rand or not 6 Rand, it's 99 cents. So it kind of almost urges you to say, okay, I'll save a couple of cents if I go and buy this particular product in bulk as opposed to buying one or two of them. That's the kind of techniques they use to get us to take action. Also, if you're looking at a brand like Netflix, okay, it says to you, see what's next. Now, obviously, if you are looking at that line, see what's next, you're thinking, okay, very easy. Let me get onto the internet, type in and search for Netflix, and I look up this particular app that has now been produced, and I can see that I can join free for 1 month. Suddenly it becomes very interesting because I don't have to pay anything yet. I've got 30 days of free experience available to me there. Thereafter, after the next 30 days, I would be paying in a particular amount. So it almost lures you in to go and buy that particular service or product, and then you get caught in it because it becomes so interesting over the next 30 days that you start saying, oh, you know what, 39 Rand, 69 Rand, 199 Rand is not that much. But if you, that person that's penny wise, you're going to think about that 199 Rand that you're paying. Right. And then other words like shop now, immediately they're saying you go on there, you buy what you want, pay, out, done, dusted. No need to stand in long queues. No need to worry about whether it's going to fit me or not. If it doesn't, I give it back to the people, the courier service, and they take it away. So it becomes very easy to buy into the idea of shopping online. Right. That is all about us now taking action. Good. Now we're looking at the meta language of advertisements. Product obviously is the object being advertised. Service is again a service, something that's not being tangible, that's not tangible, okay? For example, car insurance or medical aid or all of those things, right? Then you've got the target market. I did say to you, it's a specific group of people that the advert is aimed at. Then you've got the brand. I've mentioned brands to you here in this particular lesson so far. And then you've got what we call the slogan. Now, the slogan is very important, grade 12s, because that is basically the catchphrase of the company or the product that is being advertised. All right. So in this case, if you're looking at I'm loving it, you're thinking about where it comes from. Obviously, you know that brand very well, okay? Or Just Do It is obviously the Nike brand. Now you've got also aspects of language being used. Now I'm going to highlight them all together here, or put them all together so we can just go through them all together, right? So informal language is very much the language that we're using every day. So that would be vocab or words that are not so sophisticated. It's simple sentences, short sentences that get us immediately attracted, all right? So sometimes there could be slang or colloquialism being used. If we're looking at the informative language on the other side, that is language that's used, concepts within the language structures that is informing us as the viewer of the product or service being advertised. So this is where the language assists the advertiser to sell that particular product. So remember I mentioned about terms that are found in a particular field of study, we call that jargon. So there's particular terms that will only feature in the law faculty, for example, or in the medical fraternity. That kind of thing would be looking at jargon. All right. Then you've got that emotive language also coming across, right? Where we're appealing to the emotions of the person and it's very much persuasive. So the choice of words that are used by the advertiser will definitely fall under the emotive language section. Right, then you got the figurative language. So we're taking the literal meaning of things and looking at it on the figurative level. So this is where we are using or making use of your figures of speech, for example, your metaphors, your personification, your hyperbole, all right? All of that will come into play because here the advertiser wants to captivate your attention. All right, and then also found very much used in the adverts is the pun, that play on words, that clever play on words that would make us want to buy into the product or service. Now, when you have an advertisement in front of you, how do you analyze it, grade 12s? Firstly, let's look at this advert. The paint that makes you look good, and here's a nice house there that has been painted, and the newly let's say married, or the couple that's standing outside there, look, she's very much doting over her boyfriend or her husband here, that is shown by the particular foot in the air. All right. Then, if you're looking at the bottom here, we've got the product that has been showcased, and then you've got the text that is important there. All right. So, this words here, the paint that makes you look good, is your slogan, your catching or your catchy phrase, right? So, it makes you look good because you are then having a high quality paint being used on your house, and then it showcases you as very much being sophisticated, right? Then look at the facial expression of the lady here and her body language, making them look like they're also very much in love there, right? Concepts of facial expression and body language definitely featuring in advertisements, all right, and also in cartoons. And then the product I did mention to you is the paint that has been advertised there. The product information is contained in the text here. So it says from premium paints, it's a specialist paint that makes you look good. Perfect for the first coat onto plaster, which prevents paint from peeling. It's a bonding sealer, primer, waterproofer, and top coat all in one. So here's a product that does everything in one. Now already just by reading that text, you would think to yourself, okay, so I don't have to go through the whole process here. I can just quickly make sure that I just do the paint and everything is sorted. No need to worry about the paint peeling and it all looking ugly over the next few years. So this is, again, language used to keep us engaged and to make us take action to go out and buy this particular paint brand, right? And then the logo there of the premium paint. So look at those concepts when you get the advert in the paper. Now, when you're also looking at the advertisement, remember you've got to ask yourself, what visual is being advertised here? What are the details that I see in this particular advert that makes me want to go out and take action? All right. Then look at the literal language, the meaning of literal meaning of words versus the figurative meaning of the words. Look for who's the intended audience here, because that's your target market being spoken about. Look further and then now analyze. Is this particular product or service being advertised? Has the advertiser done justice? In other words, how effectively did he get that idea across that that product or that service is the best one to buy into? What is the impact of this advert on me as a person? Do I want to buy into it or not? Look at it, okay? Think also a bit further about the intended message of the advertiser. Do you agree with his viewpoint or not? And if you don't, or if you do, you've got to be able to substantiate that viewpoint. Right. So you're looking for the message in terms of what the advertiser wants to get across to us. You're looking for the target audience. You're looking for the verbal and visual clues that might be there in that particular text. You're looking for the slogan versus the logo. You're looking for punctuation marks that are also being used, okay? Because if you have an exclamation mark as opposed to an ellipsis, two different marks altogether, or punctuation marks altogether, and having different functions. You've got to look at that, okay? And is there use maybe of rhetorical questions there in this particular advertisement? Right. So if you're looking at an advert, for example, like this one, Alpha Hospital, the state of mind, bullying, spot it and stop it. And then here's your text. All right, the words there, and here's the image. So image versus the words. Now, in your paper grade 12s, you would see that it's showcased to you as the advert, yes. And then the examiners, obviously wanting to make sure that no one is unfairly disadvantaged here. So they give you the text in a text box of what has been given at the bottom of the advert or within the advert, so that you can read it clearly and understand the message of the advertisement. So in dealing with this particular advert, let's look at what's happening here. Besides the words of saying speak up and speak out if you are being bullied, or if you know someone who is being bullied, that already tells us that we need to take action. Speak to your manager and or HR, who will be supportive and helpful in finding the right way through. Try to sort the issue informally first of all, and then make a formal complaint to your line manager and raise the issue on staff feedback. So this is steps that you must take if you have been a victim of bullying. Now you're thinking that's the words. And the words are showcased by the image in this particular instance. And how is it showed? In terms of a puppet versus the puppeteer. Okay, so now if you are thinking about a puppet, for example, think about Pinocchio. Okay, he was obviously made by somebody, and all his actions have been then being manipulated by the puppeteer. So in this instance, we're saying that this long arched arm here is the puppeteer's arm there, and over and above that, you've got the threads here, which is where the strings, sorry, which are then being used to manipulate the movement of the puppet. All right. So if he wants the puppet to jump in a particular way, he'll pull a particular string this way or that way, and the puppet will act accordingly. And that's what we're talking about in terms of a bully. He or she will be manipulating the actions or the reactions of the victim, which is then going to be the puppet. Okay. So just by doing all of that, thinking about what the idea of a puppet versus a puppeteer is, and reading the text, we already got an idea of what this advertiser is talking about. Okay, so how do we go about it? Let's look at some questions. Account for the tone of the headline. So already you're thinking headline means a particular one that's standing out, okay? Bullying, spot it and stop it. All right, so if you had to look at the image again on the side of the screen, you would see it there, a different font being used as well. Right, so what is the answer that was given in this particular exam paper? The commanding tone, so here we have already linked the tone, 1 mark given for that, compels the reader to act on the instruction. Stop it or spot it and stop it in this case with the exclamation mark means it is a command. It says take action now. Stop it immediately. And how do you do that? You take action in terms of reporting it. And therefore, by doing that, you will curtail the experience of being bullied. So you're going to get 1 mark for the identification of the tone, and you're going to get 1 mark for the explanation, which then gives you the 2 marks. So your mark allocated, remember, is a guideline as to the ideas that you need to be looking at in your answer. So if you're going to give us a straight question like this, a level 1 question, level 2 question, for example, in this case, then it's a straightforward recalling answer that is required of you, recalling information of what's been advertised to give us an answer. All right, so that tone that's there, remember, there is tone versus mood and atmosphere. All right, so the tone is what the author or the writer is feeling about that particular concept, okay, or that idea. It's his attitude. And then you have the mood, which is then created when you read the particular work of art that is being focused on. Right, so that is how we deal with that question for 2 marks on identifying the tone firstly, and then telling us what should you do to curtail bullying. All right, because that's what the answer is, questions asking of you. Good. 3.2 was then asking the following question. Discuss, okay, already we're looking at Barrett's here. Remember, you're going up from your level 3 here. All right. Discuss the suitability of the illustration in the text. The moment you are asked to do this, it means you've got to offer a discussion, offer an explanation of what? The illustration in the text. In other words, what is being advertised in relation to what is being conveyed in terms of the message of the advertiser. So what is his message linked in terms of what he's showcasing in terms of the image? Right. So this was already explained to you when we broke this down at the beginning. The victim of bullying is depicted as the puppet and the bully as the puppeteer. By severing the strings, the victim takes a stand and attempts to break the cycle of bullying. The power of the bully is suggested by the larger-than-life arm, its domineering position above the victim. The silhouette of the victim, a faceless representation of an employee in this case, appeals to a wider audience. The point driven home is that the victim of bullying is the only person who can stop the cycle. All right, so explain what happens with a puppet and a puppeteer, and explain how the bully controls the movements of the puppet, and the only way the puppet would be able to break free from this is when the puppet takes a stand for itself and fights against what the puppeteer is doing. Right, and then that is then saying or done in that particular advert, and it's linked to the message that the advertiser wants to send to you. Take action and break the cycle. All right, 3.3, comment on 2 techniques that the advertiser has used in the written text to influence the reader. For 3 marks, remember again here looking at the mark allocation, we need 2 well-discussed techniques, okay? So if you're mentioning the technique and you're giving us the explanation, you're going to definitely get the 3 marks, all right? Different fonts are used to differentiate the segments of information. So if you're talking about the different types of font being used, that's already 1 technique. The different font sizes and the bold font arrest the reader's attention. In other words, By using that particular types of font, it grabs the attention of the reader. The advertiser's use of pronouns, so that is the next one, you and your, urges the reader to take action against bullying. So there's the technique, which is the pronouns being used, the example that is being mentioned there of you and your, and then obviously the comment there asking us to take action. The layout allows the reader to follow a logical sequence, firstly identifying the problem, defining it, and then being presented with steps to alleviate the problem. So that's another one that we're looking at, layout. And then you've got the reverse print, white print on black background, draws attention to the context in the text box, emphasizes important points for consideration. So the moment you take any of those two techniques, mention them and explain them in context, you're getting the 3 marks. All right. So there is a lot in the particular advert that's given to you. You need to find 2 that you can explain very well to get the 3rd mark. Okay. Then alliteration is also being used there with the repetition of the S, a catchphrase that resonates with the target audience. Assonance is also used where you've got the repetition of the vowels, O in this case, enhancing the internal rhythm or the rhyme of this particular headline. The repetition of speak, all right, reinforces persuasive impact of the advert. The exclamation mark in this instance in the headline creates that sense of urgency. It's stop, take action immediately, okay? The emotive diction juxtaposes the ideal situation, our hospital, dignity and respect, with the harsh reality of bullying. Persistent, intimidating, humiliating behavior. All right, so there you're going to look at the particular words being used in the advert, and then you're going to talk about it there. So award 3 marks only if the comment is made on any of the 2 techniques. So any of the 2 identified and the comment given will give you the 3 marks. Right, then within your section of advertisements, you will get language questions, and in this case, a synonym, for example, for the word intimidating in context. Any of those 3 alternatives would be giving you that mark there. All right, so you got to build your vocabulary, please, when you're working with adverts as well. And then raise the issue on the staff feedback website. Provide a part of speech for staff in the sentence above, and you obviously know it's an adjective. All right, so that is the kind of questions you would be getting for adverts, right? So please, grade 12s, go back to the last 3 to 5 years of the papers, NSC papers, and work through them in conjunction with the notes given to you in class and the explanation given to you by your teachers, and then looking at these lessons that are giving you hints on how to analyze the advertisements, and then you will be prepared well for the exam. All right, use all the resources given to you by your teachers at school level as well. Good. Then we go to our cartoon analysis. Remember, the cartoons is a piece of art, usually humorous in its purpose. All right, so it's meant to create humor. They are there to express ideas and draw attention to well-known personalities, for example. And they usually are showcasing a current social or political event that's taking place. Now, here we are tackling the issue of stereotypes. We are almost breaking down those stereotypes to make sure that we see if there's any truth to those stereotypes. Yes, but if there isn't, we then obviously showcase to people to discard those kind of stereotypes. All right, so in terms of the visual literacy, here's a cartoon strip given to you. All right, I'm just going to take you through the cartoon strip, and we're going to be looking at certain concepts. Firstly, when you see the cartoon, you've got to know that these are frames. All right, there will be 4 to 5 frames, if not 10 frames given to you. It's not impossible. You just need to look at the information contained within those frames. Remember, within the frames is the direct speech of the characters that is taking place. So all that action, all of that information is taking place within that space of time. All right, that present moment. Within the particular frame here, for example, in frame 2, you will notice these lines, okay? Those are what we call movement lines. So it's as if the lady is shaking her head from left to right like this in a sort of a hurried speed, okay? Because she's like left, right, left, right, left, right, all of these things trying to get stuff done. All right, so that's your movement lines being showcased to you there. Then you've got also within the frame what we call speech bubbles. Now there's a difference between the speech bubble and the thought bubble, which is what I'm going to show you also just now and explain to you the difference. All right, so here if you're looking at the first one, notice it's a solid line in terms of the bubble, and that is the speech bubble. So it's the actual words of the character. Then where you've got that's almost cloud-like structure of the speech of the bubble, sorry, that is then the thought bubble. In other words, it's the thoughts of the character. It's not the spoken words. Right. Then we've got also to look at the setting in terms of the elements that have been showcased in that particular frame. Where is this action taking place? Right. Then we've got the next part that you need to focus on is this facial expression versus the body language here. All right, so over 2 frames again, there's a change in terms of her facial expression and her body language. Now remember, facial expression to do with the face, everything here in terms of the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the movements that it makes, and then the body language in terms of the body, okay? Upward shoulders, downward shoulders, open stance, all those things, all right, would indicate certain things about the character in that cartoon frame. Right, so that is just a very simplistic way of looking at the cartoons. Right, basic structure of cartoons is there will be a text box that will set the scene of what is taking place, the action that is to follow. The frame is normally the shape of a square where the action is taking place within, all right? They build up a sense of time and space. The gutter is basically here, the space between the 2 frames. And that is where we get this idea that the audience needs to fill in the gap. Try and link the information. So here you get to make assumptions of what is going to happen next in the frame to come. The characters are the fictional people that are obviously being showcased in the cartoon and the conversations they are happening, that are taking place between them in this cartoon, right? And then remember I said to you it's usually being humorous. We're talking about a punchline here, where it's the final line of the joke, where it consists of a last few words that brings that story to an end and sort of delivers the punchline, the main idea of the joke. All right, so if you're looking at this image of the dog and throwing the ball, for example, chasing after it, boink, boink, and then what happens? The ball lands on the bird, and the bird in the 3rd frame obviously is smashed by the ball, and then he says, ah, I killed the bird. So that again, look at his change in terms of, okay, the movement lines here, how the ball is bouncing, as well as here, and then his facial expression, how it changes from frame 1 to frame 4. All right, so you will be able to see the action taking place over the 3-4 frames there, and how his facial expression changes with what happens at the end, realizing that he has killed a bird by bouncing this ball like that. All right, now there is the different bubbles that we speak about. All right, the first one is obviously the speech bubble. It is the solid line one I was talking to you about. It's the direct words of the character. The next one, that cloud-like image, is the thought bubble, and it's words that are not spoken aloud. And then you've got the jagged edged one, which is where we're showcasing the emotional reactions of the character. All right, what should I do? And then he's obviously got exclamation marks and question marks there as well. Right, the meta language of cartoons, very much that you will see being used, is concepts like irony, right? A strange, funny, or sad situation in which things happen the opposite way to what you would expect to be happening. Please, grade 12s, these are things that you need to go and make sure you understand so that you can apply them in terms of the cartoons. Go over sarcasm, where we're looking at that saying, writing the opposite of what you mean, for example, or speaking in a way intended to make someone feel stupid or also show them to be angry. Right, so that is the difference between irony and sarcasm. Then notice we spoke about puns before, that clever play of the words that is being used to show different meanings. And then satire, which is that concept that you need to know is there to make humor, okay, come across. And that is when you're making fun or criticizing something or someone to make them seem silly, right? Then you've got stereotypes versus the character. Stereotypes, remember I said to you that preconceived idea about a group of people. When a character represents a specific type of person, we're calling this stereotype. So it's based on the experiences that that person had with that particular group of people. Versus the caricature, which is a character who represents someone famous in society. And here we are showcasing certain aspects of that particular celebrity, which is it's almost like you enhance those features to emphasize that particular part of that person's body or feature, right? And that is character. Then you're looking at a masculine stereotype versus a feminine stereotype. You need to look at that, okay? And then here's an example of caricature. We all know this particular celebrity, which is Will Smith, and he's known for his big ears, for example, and his heavy cheekbones, all right? So that is the kind of thing we would associate with Will Smith. Then you've got the body language. This is a very important concept because it's showcasing how the character is feeling about what's happening. So here you would look at the position of his arms, for example, or in this case, how his legs are moving here, right? The position in relation to another character in the frame. So here is Tom and Jerry. Jerry, all right? Now who's Jerry? The cat or the mouse? You need to figure it out if you don't know, all right? So basically, Jerry kicks Tom, and then Tom is now basically feeling the impact of it, and he's sheltering away, all right? And then that's shown by the motion lines here, or movement lines, sorry, there. And then here it's a nice example of the movement lines here, showcasing that it's a good walloped kick into the butt of Tom, and then basically Tom has to seek cover. Right, and then how to read some body language. You need to go and do some practice, please. Familiarize yourself with what kind of structures that have been showcased here in terms of how it will show a closed position, an open position, showcase how you would showcase someone being honest. We take again a stereotypical view that if you almost always rubbing your nose or touching your nose is indicating that you are lying about a particular aspect, that kind of thing, okay? Challenging the stereotypes. Then the meta language of the cartoon, again showcasing facial expression here. All right, this is dealing with the face, and it tells us what the character is going through. So here it's dealing with the tone of the character, what he's feeling, his tone, about what is being said or what is happening at that given point. So his feelings are showcased by the facial expression. So in this instance, look at this particular boy's face. All right, he's like, okay, this would be the body language, the hands open, okay? But his face, look at his structure of his mouth, like, and the eyes going upwards, all right? Showing like what is really going on here. That is a sense of helplessness. Anger, look at this one here. His face again, his eyes elevated, and his body language, obviously with the arms here, would be on his hip, all right? But the facial expression is the elevated eyes and no smile at all, so he's angry. Look at the depressed person's face here, for example, right? No smile, eyes drawn down, very much closed off to looking any further, showing her depressive state. And then confusion, again, open eyes, wide open eyes, looking up aimlessly, not looking at a particular specific thing, therefore showing there's no real understanding taking place there. Right, so then we've got onomatopoeia, and that is when the words used, for example, are imitative of what is going to actually happen. All right, so when you say boom, that already, that sound of the word boom should give you that sense of being scared about something, all right? Or bang, that kind of thing should also make you feel scared if you're using the word in the right context. Right, so look for onomatopoeia. Then in terms of actions, what is happening in the cartoon? How is the action being portrayed? Characters, what emotions are being communicated through the facial expressions? What does the body language suggest about the relationship between the characters? What does the body language also showcase in terms of actions that they are partaking in? The language being used here, what kind of words are being used? Antonyms, synonyms, homonyms, homophones, all of these concepts should be understood when dealing with language. Also look at the punctuation marks being used here. Look at the figurative meaning of the words that has been showcased as well. Setting, remember, is where the action's actually taking place. Where is the cartoon set? What is the particular social context that is being used here? Stereotypes versus symbols. Has the cartoonist made use of stereotypes, for example? Has the cartoonist used any symbols that you would commonly associate with a particular group of people or a person? Right. So how do you analyze a cartoon? You look at the characters and whether they are characters, fictional characters or caricatures. You look at the background and the setting, where and when is this particular scene taking place. You look at the language being used. Is there a formal or an informal register being used, for example, here? Are there short, simple sentences being used as opposed to long, drawn-out sentences? How are they structured? Because that would obviously showcase meaning. Look at the punctuation marks. Are they using rhetorical questions, question marks, okay? We'll be looking there and the words that is being that's in that question. Look at the question mark versus the exclamation mark versus the ellipsis versus the colon and the semicolon. All right, those are used to portray emotions along with others. Look at the actions that are taking place in the frame from frame 1 to frame 2 to frame 4 to frame 6. Look at the facial expression of the characters there. Look at the body language, the portrayal of the movement of the characters within those frames. Look for the objectives of the cartoonist here. What was his aim? Did he want to inform us about something? Did he want us to be manipulated to believe something differently? Did he want to entertain us about a particular incident? All right. Look at the movement lines there. Are they vertical, curved, or diagonal lines? Those would have three different reasons that you have to identify why they're being used. The speedy action lines, for example, indicated by those streaky lines of the action leaving the frame. And then the fonts, very important, because the font will change within the frames for an emphasis of a particular issue that is being showcased. All right. So this is very important to go on and revise these things. All right, grade 12s. So if you had looked at an example like this, for example, of peanuts, okay, and this is usually associated with the character of Charlie Brown, and we know Charlie Brown has the friend, which is the female here. Okay. So Charlie Brown's busy writing in frame 1 there. Frame 2, look, he's dressing up and he's about to go out or do something. All right. So in frame 3, it says, you're going to be proud of me. Lucy. Lucy is the name of the girl here. All right. I've decided that this next year is going to be my year of decision. All right. Exclamation mark, meaning he's certain he's going to do this. This is the list of things in my life that I'm going to correct. I'm three dots, ellipsis. I'm going to be a better person. And she says, not me. I'm going to spend this whole year regretting the past. It's the only way. Charlie Brown. All right? Ellipsis. So she's obviously going to continue that idea. All right? I'm going to cry over spilt milk and sigh over lost loves. Okay? Notice the change in her facial expression here. A straight-faced, no smile, nothing like that. All right? And then it's further enhanced here with more of a longer lip closed off. All right? And then her eyes very much drawn inward there. Okay, and her nose. Charlie Brown's just standing there like, what are you on about? Okay. And then in frame 7, it's a lot easier. It's too hard to improve. I tried it once. It drove me crazy. So now he's like, did I just do all of this for nothing? Okay, you can look, he's looking at the particular page in his hand where he wrote down all these things he's going to change about himself. And here's Lucy, who he associates as a best friend here, not really interested in changing anything. Forget the future is my motto. Regret the past. Oh, how I regret the past. And then her two hands on her face, and the exclamation mark is showcasing that particular emotion. All right? Why do I do this? Why did I do that? Sorry, why did I do this? Why did I do that? Why? I regret it all. So there's that rhetorical questions being asked, all right? And she's just like, okay, I just regret it all. Oh, what regrets, what remorse, what anguish, what? And all Charlie Brown does is he sighs and throws away the page that he worked so diligently on to make note of the changes he was going to do in his life. All right, so that's the frames there. It's quite a long one, isn't it? So you will get an example like this in your exam. So explain how Charlie Brown's mood is conveyed in frame 3. If you go back to frame 3, oopsie daisy. Go back to frame 3. It's this one over here where we're talking about him being so proud of what he achieved and how he's going to make decisions next year. All right, so she says, it goes on to talk about his mood. Charlie Brown is happy, self-assured, excited, as shown by his jaunty step, beaming smile, desire to change, outstretched arm, showing the note or the spoken words. And the words, proud of me, my fear, my year of decision. So those words are enhancing the fact that he's excited, he's enthusiastic, he's assured that he's going to make a change this year. 2 marks there, obviously, for giving that answer, right? In terms of mentioning his mood and how his mood is being showcased. Frame 4 to 6, discuss both characters' viewpoints with reference to the cartoonist's depiction of them. In frame 4, Charlie's viewpoint is that he is committed to being a better and more decisive person. It's shown by his self-satisfied smile and bold stance. The cartoonist places him in a frame on his own. Lucy, by contrast, has chosen to wallow in self-pity and regret. All right. This is indicated by her despairing look and outstretched arms in frame 5. The decision is further highlighted in frame 6 by her downturned mouth and folded arms. The words "I'm going to cry over spilt milk" reinforces the view. So you go from frame 4 all the way to frame 6 and you give a commentary of what is happening in terms of the characters' interactions between frame 4, the change in frame 5, and in terms of frame 6, how they have now reacted differently. Okay, and that would then give you the 3 marks there. Good. Then 4.3 says comment critically. Okay, already going on to a level 5 questioning here on the effectiveness of frame 10. That's the last frame of the cartoon in context of the cartoon. So here we're saying, despite Charlie's initial optimism in the introductory frames, in frame 10, he abandons his decision. Remember, he's standing there and he, sighs and he just throws the paper away. So he abandons his decision to be a better person after being defeated by Lucy's fatalistic attitude. So in other words, she believes nothing's going to change. There's no need to do anything different. It's going to happen again, and she's just defeated by that. All right, that's your 1 mark there. Charlie is unable to convince himself or Lucy by the end of the cartoonist. His weakness adds to the anticlimax of the frame. So because he was so enthusiastic and her reactions defeated his enthusiasm, he then gives into what she was believing, and it obviously ends in that turning point where he also just succumbs to failure. Or you could then say his validation from Lucy in frame 3 is asked for, but he's sidelined by Lucy's dominant and self-absorbed personality. This leads to the ironic conclusion that Charlie becomes a victim of his own question and discards the paper in defeat. All right, that's not, it's a right answer, but it's sort of like, you won't really get to this point if you are not thinking at that level 5 thinking level. All right, but if you are, then you will get to that idea to say that he asked for validation. In other words, he wants to be seen as making a change and being proud of that. And then by her mentioning of all these, almost fatalistic view that you can never succeed in these things and being self-absorbed, it then makes it feel to him that this is just a total waste of time, and then he just discards the paper altogether. All right, also in defeat. So those are the things you're going to look at if you are looking for the 3 marks in this particular answer. All right. Then question 4.4, the language question. The following sentence in the indirect speech. Remember, the words within the frame is the direct speech. We're now looking for the indirect. Lucy said, I'm going to spend this whole year regretting the past. Lucy said that she was going to, oh boy. She was going to, whoa, let's go back. She was going to spend that whole year regretting the past. Notice was and that all in the showcasing the past tense, and everything has changed in that response to the past, and therefore you'll get the 2 marks for that. Right, so when looking at the cartoons, always look at the picture and read the writing with attention. Look at the characters' body language and their facial expressions. Look at the type of language that is being used. Look at the punctuation marks and the words that are in bold. They are there for emphasizing a particular incident or a particular event taking place. Look at the setting versus the background. Look at the details showcased in those frames. Look for the expectations that could come out of what is being showcased in the frames and how they are then going to be overturned to create humor. And then please always look for that intention of the cartoonist. Right? Remember, the question is not not definition based, but about the usage of the concepts, all right? So you have to apply all the concepts that I've spoken about to the cartoon. Look at apostrophe, semicolon, ellipsis, hyphen, dash. All of this is linked to parenthesis. Look at the spelling errors. Be aware of the malapropism that's used there. Active versus the passive voice can be tested as well with the language question. Look for errors of concord. Look for comma splice errors. All right? Okay, sorry. This is now going on to the textual editing. Goodness me. Sorry, grade 12s. I moved ahead on slides and I just duplicated certain ideas. All right. So this one was with regards to the cartoons. All right? And hopefully you've understood those concepts of the cartoons. Then the last part of the lesson is the textual editing. These things I've mentioned there already, sorry. You need to look at these concepts for your question 5. So go back and take the last 4 to 5 years of question 5. There are question banks that you must should have created by now, and you work through all of the concepts that have been tested. All right. Look at abbreviation, acronym, contractions, for example. An explanation of their function is definitely what we're looking for, rather than just identifying that. Please look at also expressions given. You've got to explain them in full. All right. To ruffle someone's feathers, for example, means to upset them considerably. All right. Look for antonyms or synonyms in context. Don't just put something there to make it fit. Look at the mark allocation, usually obviously between 1 and 2 marks for this question 5, and then make sure you satisfy that allocation of marks. Highlight, make notes on that question paper, practice with your old examination papers, please, and look at your time management here. Right, with textual editing, remember it's all of the terms you have learned over the years, right? So look at them and see how they apply in the sentence that is given to you. Concord errors, all those things will come through. So you'll get a text and you have to read the text and understand what the text is saying, yes, but you will find errors that are deliberately made in that particular passage, right? So read the text, make sense of what is being said, and then obviously highlight or underline the errors on the question paper and apply your understanding to those language concepts that you learned about in class. All right, there's a wide range of skills and content being tested, so look at that. Typical items that you would need to revise on is the following: punctuation, the use of apostrophe, the semicolon, the ellipsis, the dash, active and passive speech, concord, misrelated participle, abbreviation, acronym, contractions. Look at malapropism, for example. Hot tip for you here is try reading the sentence out loud to yourself and you will hear the error with regards to malapropism. It makes it easier to identify and correct the mistakes then. All right? So here's examples of punctuation marks that you must look at. I've showcased it to you on images, so please go ahead and look at all of that. Okay, ambiguity, remember that double meaning that can come through. If you're looking at here, possibly, if you look the first time, you would think that this image is an image of a bird, its beak and stuff. And if you look a bit further, you would see that it also could be the rabbit, okay, when you're looking at that for ambiguity. So you must be able to explain the double meaning. Tautology and redundancy there, okay, and the image explained there. Please remember, when the question is saying to you identify the redundancy or tautology, remove the one part, okay? Becomes very difficult to mark it when the the markers are marking. Then you've got homophones. Remember, pair and pair, they sound the same, but obviously you can see they are showcasing different things, okay? T and T, yoke and yoke, two different things altogether. Right, malapropism. That's why it's called a bump bed. Okay, obviously, if you read it a bit loud to yourself, you would see that this idea here of bumping your head against the bed frame. Right? Then toothpicks. There's that clever play of words in this particular cartoon showcased to you there. All right? And fistamantastic. There's the example there of spoonerism. You're too slow. You are very, very low in speed. You, the person I'm addressing to, appear to have a low pace of acceleration when compared to myself. And then that is all there showcasing verbosity. Okay. So remember, these things, we don't usually hear about them too often, but they are definitely language concepts that can be tested in the exam. Right. Redundancy and tautology again there for you. Please go over it. Oxymoron, genuine fake watches. Come on, that should definitely make sense to you on there in terms of the oxymoron, right? And then here's a synopsis of what happened from 2018 all the way to 2024. Now, grade 12s, do yourself a favor. Once this lesson is done, go back, take the papers of the NSC and look at question 5. For example, if you're going to do 3 years, it's fine. If you're going to do 5 years, even better. Go through and then see for yourself all of these concepts that were tested. You will notice that there's similarities of certain ones that have been tested. And then obviously, by the time you work through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years here itself, you would have covered the full range of terms you need to be able to analyze in textual editing. All right. Then in 2023, 2024, again, here is the concepts that were tested, the structure, sorry. Homophone, passive voice, redundancy, writing out in full, adjectives, commas, tenses, antonyms, concord errors, apostrophe, redundancy, malapropism, direct speech. All right. You see redundancy there. Apostrophe is obviously part of punctuation, adjectives and verbs, okay, parts of speech coming out there, homophone, antonyms, all of these, okay, you need to familiarize yourself with. Then look at synonym also coming through there, all right. Hyphen and is again your punctuation mark, pronoun, conjunction, and the passive voice versus the active voice. So you can look at these concepts, please, and work out them over the last 3 to 5 years. If you do that, grade 12s, you would not have a problem in passing question 5. Right. Remember to please also go back and look at that strategy of home language we're talking about, where if you're the candidate who's sitting on the 50 percentage, wants to get to 60, 70, 80%, how to get there. We did cover that in the previous lessons. If you are not able to go back, then go to your teacher and ask him or her to explain it to you. All right, how you can get the basic marks if you need to master to get those marks. Okay. Guidelines on teaching and understanding language and editing skills. Malapropism, the mistaken use of a word in place of a similar sounding one, often with an amusing effect. Okay, example, dance a flamingo instead of flamenco. Neologism, a newly coined word or expression. Tautology, you must know. Error in concord, you have seen before. Concord being that error or the relationship between the subject and the verb in the sentence. Remember, singular subject, singular verb. Plural subject, plural verb. So you have to correct the error there, okay? So please work with that. Active voice, when the subject of the sentence performs the verb's action, we say that the sentence is in the active voice. Sentences in the active voice have a strong, direct, and a clear tone. And then here you can look at some straightforward examples, okay? Active voice examples. Monkeys adore bananas. The cashier counted the money. The dog chased the squirrel. All three sentences have a basic active voice construction: a subject, verb, and object. The subject, in terms of the monkey, performs the action described by adore. All right. The second one about the cashier, the subject, which is the cashier, performs the adject, which is counting the money. All right. And then the dog chased the squirrel. There's the dog, which is the subject, and the action he does, which is showcased by chasing something. All right. Then passive voice. The sentence in the passive voice, on the other hand, is when the subject is acted on by the verb. So doing this usually generates a preposition as well that sounds much more complicated than it is. Right, so you need to go back and look at how you change active voice to passive voice and passive voice to active voice, okay? There's some examples also that you must go and work on. Please ask your teacher for them. Okay, use of hyphens and commas. Please, grade 12s, I don't have enough time to go through all of this information, but you need to go and find out what is the different punctuation marks used for. Why do I use the hyphen? Why do I use the dash? Why do I use the comma? Remember to look for the comma splice errors here as well, okay? Remember, comma usually signal a pause, for example. It separates the words, the clauses, or ideas within a sentence. Navigating through snow, sleet, wind, and darkness is a miserable way to travel. There's the comma being used there. All right, so work through that. The apostrophe, okay, usually we only know there's two functions, either the possession or the omission contraction, okay? So the punctuation mark is used to create possession, Harry's book. In other words, the book belongs to Harry. And then in terms of the omission, can't, so you're missing the word, cannot, okay? Can't, it's can and not. All right, you're going to look at that. And then the contraction would then be cannot and can't. So here's something you can go and work on. It was in a previous exam paper. When your Airbnb host charges you for air, go through it and look at how to answer the questions, okay? So even if you go through any of the previous grade 12 NSC papers, you will get a load of concepts that you can be working with in question 5. All right, and if you work through the whole paper, you will cover a full range of language concepts as well. All right, so grade 12s, thank you so much for joining me for these last two lessons where we were working on the revision of paper 1. Hopefully you go back, you take the time to prep yourself really well. You've got another 4 days to go before Monday next week, where you will write your English home language paper 1. And then you need to obviously make sure that you have mastered the skills. All right, please do not take these exams for granted. As I mentioned to you, ensure you master the skills and you learn everything you need in terms of the concepts to get that maximum marks. Okay, I want to wish you all the best for your exams going forward. We have one more lesson where we'll be focusing on your preparation as well for another paper next week Monday, and then you'll be by that time fully into your exams. All right, so please take care of your health as you're preparing for your exams. Now as you're writing your paper 3s, for example, or other tests and other assignments, ensure that you are taking it seriously. Until next week or the next time I see you, thank you for watching the lesson and catch you very, very soon.